2 bolts on the motor mounts. We have 2 here in the front. We have this one for the left and then this one for the right. They're really easy to get to. There's also these are all 14 millimeter, by the way. There's also one here at the bottom. This is the motor mount that connects to the subframe. And we also have one here at the bottom, which really easy to get to. So we'll loosen these up first, then we'll do the front ones. And then once we do that, we're gonna lift the motor up. And there's 2 more of these, one on each side in the back. They're a little bit harder to get to, so you have to raise the motor up enough to get in there with a ratchet to get those out. Careful, don't get stuck underneath the subframe. You gotta get just on the oil pan. That's where the other bolt is for the motor mount on the left side. It's the exact same thing on the right side. So you just gotta get back there with a hand ratchet and then just ratchet that off by hand, and then that motor mount will come right out. And then it's the exact same thing, same process, reverse, to put them back in. And it might be easier to get to a certain point when it gets loose. You can get the rest of it by hand if you're not afraid to put your hand in there. So there's that. That's what happened to the motor mount. Can you see that? I think it's crushed. That is not what your motor mount's supposed to look like. Bad one, good one. These lines really make it harder. And take it off by hand. All right, that. This one's also damaged. You can see how it's bent. That is supposed to be in the center. It's all messed up. All right, and there we go. Try not to get your tool stuck. Both motor mounts are in. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna slowly lower the motor back into place. On the stud right here. Go ahead and finger tight that up. See the gap here between the stud and the subframe? Now look over here. You see how big that gap is from the subframe to the stud? You kind of want to center that so there's about the same amount of distance between the stud and the subframe on both sides. So you may have to lift up on the motor and push it over to kind of center that. You don't want it to be sideways. All right, see, there we go. So we got a little bit of a gap to the stud. We got a little bit of gap to the stud. Almost the exact same. And that doesn't have to be ridiculously tight. That's good. Make sure you guys put your gaskets up here. I like to just kind of get mine to kind of just float up there. Okay, and there you go. Now that's back up there. Make sure you got your gasket here for your mid pipe. I like to put the socket on an extension. Put the nut in there and just twist it by hand. If it's going on there nice and smooth, you're good. If you're having some problems and you're having to force it, then you need to back up, assess the situation, look at your nut, look at the stud, and see if there's any damage, and then go from there. All right, so I got all those on now, so I'm gonna tighten those up. All right, cat's on. This is pretty easy. First thing you want to do is you're going to slide this right onto the studs. Make sure your gasket's on there. If you don't have your gasket on there, you're gonna get an exhaust leak. And then you clip it right back up to the bracket, snaps right into place. Hands are free. And then to get all the rest of the nuts and bolts back into play. I like to just start that by hand just to get it going. Get it up there. You're gonna have to push in on the spring to do this. Requires a little bit of force just to get the nut and bolt started. Do that the same thing on both sides. And these always go on the back. So don't put them on the front. If you have springs on the front, you're doing it wrong. There we go. And nice and snug. So don't have to be overly tight. And then we're going to put our 3 14mm nuts back on here. The bottom end will be finished. Nice and snug. And the last one. All right, everything's nice and tight. You got these little tabs. These are the ones we broke when we first disconnected them from the top. We're gonna go ahead and click those right back into place. Gray one goes on the left, or the right. Yellow one goes on the left. All right, and then feed these up to the top. Set them up there. So that way when we put the car down, they're sitting right there. We can plug them right in, and then we're all done. We're gonna plug our wires back in. And the nice thing about this is you can't get this wrong because the plugs are completely different from each other. So you can't plug one plug in the wrong place. So let's go ahead and slide it in there. You hear a click. That means it's locked into place. Other one, boom. And there you have it. 2 motor mounts changed on 2010 Forester. So if this was helpful, like the page, subscribe. We appreciate all you guys watching. Thank you again. Have a good day.